Everybody's favorite Christmas character, the Grinch, is here.
And the reason the Grinch is, well, we all grew up with it, of course, but I'm good friends with Sarah Karloff. And her dad did the narration, the first Grinch. So when they were doing a Chuck Jones tribute, I was going to do a Dr. Rock thing out in Vegas. They had Chuck Jones there. And so we were going for the 50th anniversary. And one of those elements was Sarah's dad. And so I talked to Sarah about it, and then we unveiled the Grinch over there for the 50th anniversary. So we built a full size and played Boris's narration. And this way Sarah could always tell, the story about her dad, which she kind of learned from us. Now, I have a puppet of Boris Karloff, which when I started Monster TV 20 years ago, I went to Sarah and I said, what do you think? When we hung out for a while. And so I created the Karloff puppet. And basically when Karloff would talk, he'd go, oh, no problem, my dear friends. We'd simply be there with the Grinch. Now, I won a Grammy for that. The problem is that little thing they gave me was just a doorstop. and she loved it. And so we wound up doing this project together, and everyone loves the Grinch.
Pro Cannabis Media original content is sponsored by Revolutionary Clinics, with 3 locations in the greater Boston market where the medical patient comes first. And by Green Goddess Supply, your online paraphernalia superstore and the home of the Armoire Indoor Growing System. And by Holyoke Cannabis, the sponsor of the Massachusetts Cannabis Report. And by TCP Lighting, grow like a pro with Style Lighting's LED Grow Kit. And by Charles River Insurance, your experienced insurance specialist for the cannabis industry. And Green Spoon Martyr, one of the most respected law firms in the cannabis industry. Hi, everybody. Welcome again to another special edition of In the Weeds with Jimmy Young on the road at NECANN and the High Lifestyle Event Show here at Boxborough Regency Hotel in Boxborough, Massachusetts. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media and, yes, the host of In the Weeds with Jimmy Young. Obviously, in this particular case, it's going to be In the Weeds with Jimmy Young and Bill Diamond. And if you don't know who Bill Diamond is, I know you've seen his work, because this guy has been around the media world for about as long as I have, actually.
But we're still young.
I'm always going to be young. Thank God for that last name. By the way, it's about the only thing in me that is young, I might add. It is what it is. Bill, you've had an incredible career. You're obviously gifted with talent, with illustration talent, creative talent. You've been around some of the biggest names in the creative world of television and movie making for the last 30, 40, 50 years. The changes that both of us have seen. I started editing film in 1977 at Channel 4, WBZ Boston, when I was just 20 years old. And now we've...
Your little knife?
Yeah. I have that X-Acto knife. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. In fact, I just went to the hardware store to get some of those razor blades again, right?
Turno blades, that's what you need.
That's right. The changes you've seen with computer art, and yet I still saw you with your hand drawing here the other day when I walked in. You still enjoy the hand and writing utensil, drawing utensil, felt marker you use, as opposed to all the newfangled technology?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that when you're drawing on a palette or anything else, the computer is deciding for you, even though you're picking what you want. It's going to make. When you have markers, you're going to make a mistake. And you're going to straighten it out by either starting all over again or knowing how to manipulate the colors or the lines to do what you want it to do. It's still it's an art form that just keeps you in. It's not keystrokes. Even though you can use a palette with a marker, it's if you can't draw on a pen, pencil, or a paint or a marker, just going to a computer is not enough.
It's not as fulfilling. It's like a broadcaster loves radio because radio allows your voice to be the medium that you are an artist of, if you will.
And look how that's changed. Now you get to do radio, but everybody gets to watch you, and that seems to be the trend in everything, especially in sports.
Right.
It's
called visual radio.
Pretty much, or podcasts or whatever. But now you're visually seen, and they're all doing it. So it's not like anything changed. You just put a camera in the room. That's all they did.
And there's so many people out there. I work with young people, and even older people get a little freaked out by the camera, right? So I get them to talk to a plastic bottle, and I explain to them that it's an inanimate object, just like the camera is an inanimate object. Like there could be a camera in that coffee cup right there. Neither one of us would know it, so why would you be afraid of it?
The only problem is if I did that coffee cup, I'd start making it talk.
I believe that.
Then we'd have to go on a coffee break, but that's all there is to it. So.
You've done some consulting for the Yes Network. I know you've won a few of the Emmys. What exactly are you doing? You're doing set design, lighting? What exactly are you doing with Yes Network?
What the interesting thing about doing stuff with sports, they come to me to kind of give them a different feel. They'll do the standard, they'll do digital, they'll put their players. But what was nice was the players kind of now on real sets instead of just green screen. They kind of like it. They don't understand it. So they stand in front of nothing. That's not their medium. They don't know what to do with it. They're like, just stand here. So the thing is brought them back to actually moving through something. And they feel much more relaxed, because they're not from that world. They play baseball or they play football. So unless their idea is to get into media, which some do, then they understand it. But having these physical surroundings, they have fun with. And so that's what we do for them.
And with the technology now, those guys love to be in front of screens and being able to telestrate with the various graphics that follow the hands, and they can engage with the audience with their experience and the technology to explain what's going on the field. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we do with the players is the fact that if the players are there and they're batting, we put the logos or the stand among the logos, the lighting in the background. They have fun because they're walking with something physical. And even though you have all this digital stuff flying around them, they still want to come in where if there's nothing there, they're like, what do you want me to do? And it's not like them not having a bat in their hand. They just don't know what to do with it.
When you look back at this room and see this body of work of your mind, is there anything that stands out, something you're really proud of, or are you proud of just about every single project you finish?
I like them all. So there's not one that I can just, because everything was a different time or a different period that we were doing things, and they were as new and fresh there. So it's exciting, and that's what's nice about it. It's always fresh. It's always new. There's new characters, new things to explore. Sure, you liked going back and seeing them, but it's really for more the fans than it is for me. I'm more interested in seeing how they react than whatever I do my next thing, where it should go and how it should go, because now you're dealing with different ages. So they're looking at everything differently. And then they were like, what's really funny now is that everything is 80s, 70s, and 80s. And I was just explaining this at breakfast this morning, was what has changed when you and I were a kid. It was everything to do with the 40s and 50s because our parents could connect with that. All right, so that's what they did. So TV shows like Happy Days and anything to do with that was the time period. And we were like, seeing that, and my parents would say, or your parents would say, this is what we did. Right. Now they're 30, 40, and 50 that are coming to the shows, and the stuff that we did in the 80s is stuff that their childhood, that they're trying to express. Well, this is the kind of stuff that we watch, not what you're watching. So what was kids then are now the parents, and they keep going back that this is their childhood. So that we're seeing a lot happen. So I played him, and he was based on a guy named David Eden who traveled and wrote traveling books all around the country. Yeah. And he was a scientist, and I always liked that time travel stuff. So when I created him and I would puppeteer him, his voice would be, well, fantastic. unbelievable. Look at this, with this energy, these creatures, this thing that he got around his neck. Unbelievable how that works. What is that? I kind of saw that in an ancient artifact once, and it was that kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that we can also relate to the same 70s and 80s thing. And you remember the 60s just like I do, too, when we were really kids.
Well, yeah. I mean, you were watching TV shows that were very different than they are now. But things that stood the test of time, like Star Trek or anything like that, those shows have expanded and changed with us. The audience or Star Wars has covered a gamut of 30 and 40 years. So it's really interesting seeing these audience. I watch when they all come in, and I'm seeing what lights them up. And every single one of them, even 20-year-olds and even younger than that, keep on saying they like the tangible stuff. They don't like the digital stuff. And I said, but that's what Hollywood thinks you like. And they're like, well, we really don't. And so it's kind of interesting to see that. And it's also kind of interesting to see them connect with movies like Nosferatu that's 100 years old. So I think sometimes a place like Hollywood or other studios are not paying attention to what's really out there.
Sounds like our political system, too, to be honest with you, as more and more I think about that.
Yeah, well, I'm in puppetry, but if you want real puppetry, go to Washington.
I knew that was going to go there. The process.
Dresses, Pennsylvania Avenue. But no, go ahead.
No, there's another one down the road. They're both. You know what? We have checks and balances, right?
Pretty much.
And one of the checks became political recently. I don't know if you noticed that the Supreme Court became a little political. But we're not going to talk politics, right?
I never talk politics. If I do, then we shut the phone off.
That's all right. That's all right. I want to go back to a project with you. Yeah. Take me through the beginning, the idea, who's involved? Is it you just sitting up at night and thinking of different characters, or someone working with you? I'm looking for a character that can do this or looks like that or would appeal to this demographic. How does it work when it comes to the creative process?
Well, I always joke with Jimmy.
What's Jimmy?
One of my guys over there, because and people will always come up to me and say, where do you get your characters? Now, this is usually at a bar, and as Jimmy says, we open them and close them. And I say I never have to go too far.
To be inspired. To find something.
They're all around me. So the point is that if I'm creating something or a series of characters, I will find, especially socks, I will find them in a bar setting or a public setting. They're all around. When I come to a Comic Conn and I'm there, they're all there. Right. So I never, they're all there. You don't have to go too far. So I turn around and they walk up to me, whether they have a creature or Audrey 2 plan, or like they walk in with, an ET costume on, and I'm like, you don't have to go. There they are. You just so you change shows. You go from a bar to another bar, and you go from a restaurant to another place. The characters are all out there. I just give them a different look. The Land of the Moonshines, I created in '79. It was a comic strip that I did in the newspaper. And it was a series of characters that lived on the moon. And it was interesting because later on, I showed it to Jim. He liked it. And Fraggle Rock was a big hit, so we were in the midst of that. And so I wanted to I toured them as a live show. They were on cable. We did do a couple of episodes on cable, and they were fun. So I sat for a long time on it, and then moved away from it. We did the shows live. We redesigned them and brought them all back because the world was ready for them.
What made the world ready for them?
The internet. So the reason for it is the creatures live on the moon, and they have a great dynamics. But it's not a kid's show, so they'll talk about what Earth is doing, the politics with Earth. That Snacks is what we call the pessimist. He'll turn around and say, "Yeah, they haven't been here for 50 years. The last time they were here, they left a golf cart and a flag, and they thought it was a local golf course with all the holes in it. And then they left. And he'll snap, and then Garf over here then turns around and says, well, that's what's in the episode, I just found out the Earth is flat.
Is it Kyrie Irving?
And he said, so what do you mean? Well, there's this whole society, the Flat Earth Society. And he says, and Snack says, well, that shows you why they haven't come here. And he goes, why? Well, I think they fell off. So it's all that. It really kind of messes around with that generation, I'm pointing at you, and going out in there, we get to talk about it in a neutral way and play with all the opposing teams. And we can say whatever we want, and now in this world, that's a rare thing. And so they'll do it for us.
It's great. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And you know, I think I told you I have a dear friend, Neil Portnoy, who's also an illustrator. He's in Vegas, and he's one of the funniest guys I've ever met in my life. Naturally funny, he does shtick. You know, Don Rickles with a pen, Norman Rockwell of sports artists. I mean, he's really had a nice career, and now is settled in Las Vegas. And he used to say when we went to the art expo, it's always seascapes, landscapes, and nudes, right? That's what people paint, but illustration is a true, it's a way to really show the person as the world sees them through your eyes. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is. And you know, if I do a drawing, I'm always, and again, I can see them walk up and down and see a piece of art or the character, and at that point, that visual sense, when they see the eyes, that's the window of the world. So the eyes are what does it. So they're looking into the eyes of these creatures, and the artwork is looking back at them. So you know where they light up, you know, and what they get turned on to. Yeah. And that's where you find it.
Yeah. So my favorite Disney character has always been Goofy because my personality fits. Mm-hmm. Besides the goofiness, and you haven't really hung out with me too long, but you've seen me around the last couple of days. If you had to come up with a cartoon character based on my chaotic energy and personality, what do you think it would look like?
I think Goofy's working.
I was going to say, I set you up for that.
I think it's working.
I'm comfortable with my goofiness, okay?
That's fine, you know. Oh, sure, no problem.
That's right. Oh, gosh. Isn't it great, though, to be our age? Because we're the same age. I could say that, okay? I'm not going to tell everybody what it is. You get to guess. But we can still play in the sandbox, Bill.
Kidding, I'm too busy building the sandbox. What are you talking about? Well, how do you think the sand got there? There's a lot of people that come in and says, you know, so when I go to a corporation and they say to me, they said, we want to think out of the box on here, which corporations can. Mm-hmm. I can tell you that right now. And they say they can, and I'm like, really? Is that why I'm here? You know, so a lot of times they'll ask that question, as well as they will ask the question is, have you ever done this before? And my next answer is, apparently you haven't. That's why I'm here. So, thinking outside the box, I'm too busy building the box so that everyone can get into it.
I love that. That is a great way to look at a life's work, too. I mean, you look back at that. I don't know about you, but I feel I've been very, very fortunate to have as blessed a life as I have. I got to interview some of the biggest sports figures in the 80s and 90s and had my own show and won one of those trophies, not three of them, but I won one of those trophies. And I always say this to people. I say, you know, if God wanted me tomorrow, not today, tomorrow, I have too much to do today. Tomorrow, I have lived a very, very happy life. I've been blessed. How do you look at your life looking back now?
Well, first of all, I always look forward. And second of all, I have a deal with the Grim Reaper.
Your personal friends, I understand.
I have a good deal. First of all, he had a problem. He came to me, and I built him a sickle. Uh-huh. Then he said, well, someday I will call. Every time he wants to find out the address, I change it.
I like that. He's got shtick. I like shtick. This is great. Bill, what's the future for you? Where do you want to go? Where would you like to see? It's funny. It's the last place I saw you, by the way, last night, right? I guess that's a regular thing. Okay. And by the way, I've closed a few bars in my time too.
Usually there's not. I'm usually drawing something there. So.
And anywhere you get inspired, you'll just look for a pen or whatever. Do you walk around with a Sharpie all the time?
Oh yeah, Jimmy does too. Jimmy will have one here, sir. There you go.
How many people recognize you? I mean, you were walking the outside area all by yourself. No one was bothering you, just kind of observing. I mean, when then they look inside here and everybody's eyes open up. It's like, oh my God, what is this? Who is this? Do you still feel like you're flying under the radar a little bit?
Well, it was really funny. The other day I was walking out at the event, which is a wonderful time out there, and I heard, "You're by yourself? You don't have a security guard with you?" That's like, because usually Jimmy or John or Keegan will walk with me. So I'm always out there. Well, somebody caught that, and they were saying, "How did you get out of there away from them?" They did. They actually said, "What are you doing out here by yourself? You don't have like a handler with you." So I found that interesting that they even asked me that, because I wasn't thinking about that. I'm like, I'm just taking a walk. Hello. And they were like, "How did you escape?" Well, the asylum was closed for the day.
Look, a lot of us are here because of the relationship that we have with Gary Sommers, the guy who's been involved with this collectibles world now for decades, if not centuries. Don't tell him I said that.
Oh, I will.
Have you ever been at a cannabis lifestyle show like this?
Well, I was at one. It was at, I believe it was, I don't know all their names, a Harvest Cup, I believe it was.
Right, in Worcester. That's where I met you, actually, on the streets of Worcester.
Right. So I went in because Jeff and Ben, who do Toking with the Dead comic book, and I add elements to it for them, and I did their series. They had me come there, so I went to go check this out. I was very curious about it. So I wound up sitting behind them, and then I guess some people found out I was there, and they had asked me to brought some art. I didn't have any of the characters or anything. And next thing I know, they were announcing that I'm here, and it was almost like I was a guest at the event, and I was walking around. Everyone was pulling for photos. So that was the first time, and I'm like, this is interesting, because, again, I tried to go under the radar, and it didn't happen. And then I got asked by Gary to come to this, and it's really interesting.
Tell me why it's interesting.
Well, what's interesting is, the different than a Comic Con, everyone's coming to be someone else or likes a character or to meet you. Here, they're here to relax, have fun, see their favorite product, because the whole lifestyle is about relaxing and enjoying. And then suddenly I walk through, and it's like, I find it fascinating because the people that are here are putting products together for a relaxed world. Now, in a Comic Con world, it's all over the place. Okay, here it's very laid back. Everyone's having a good time. They're listening to music. They're finding their favorite smoke. Or they're finding their favorite edible, and I just find it incredible. And because I'm doing the zombie Zivid characters, which I created, which are Cannabis characters, it's interesting to be here because they're all my test subjects. So I go to the booths and I'm watching them all. And I'm actually, here's the pencil comes back out. Oh, look at that guy. Hey, dude, I really like this smoke. It's really cool. It's glowing on me. So, it's just pure material. 20 years ago, we would always hear about weed and stuff on Monster TV, so we built these two Ziffit characters. There's Ziffits, and then these are zombie Ziffits. And they were basically, we would always joke, and everyone that would see them, oh, it's like cannabis, it's like a joint or whatever, which was foreign, because it was out there, but nobody really talked about it. So we would play with these characters and the whole thing. Well, the whole idea was it lasted long enough that when Jeff and Ben created Toking with the Dead comic book, I wanted to test the market even more. And I said, maybe it's time to put this in the comic book. So I do a little special insert with it and started creating them and bringing them back to be this, from fantasy to, talking about cannabis in these crazy zombies that, cannabis takes you over. It's part of you, but then the whole world flips up inside by the mad scientist that took an alien and a plant, put it together, and what did you get? Cannabis, because it's a plant that can grow well anywhere.
I would think you're getting quite a bit out here on because I've seen a lot of characters floating around.
Yeah, it's neat. It's different than the comic book world. They're coming because of their favorite comic book or character that they know. It's interesting. They know me. And now I'm in this world with them, and they just don't realize they're all the little mice and rats that are in the thing that I'm watching.
I tend to be the one who's
around
in circles, right?
Right. So so it's really fun. So I'll come back and doodle and go, okay, let's do this, because I was fascinated because it was a new market. It's a new market to play with because all this it's an old thing a new thing that's being repackaged. It's not like it wasn't there before. It always was.
It was around the corner down the alley.
Yeah. It was like if all of a sudden if you closed the speakeasy. Right. There was a great thing that W.C. Fields did when Groucho came over, and Groucho walked in, and he called him Bill, and he says, go up in the attic. And he goes up in the attic, and there's tons of boxes, and then down in the basement, tons of boxes. And it's all liquor. And Groucho says, why do you have all this stuff? Prohibition's over with. And Fields says, it may come back. and that, again, in the cannabis world, that's what it was. And now it's back, but it's different now. So you see and what I like is seeing all these entrepreneurs out there. And I like seeing them trying to find their niche, their style, their product. And I love that. So it's always been something I did. So even I've talked about it before it became legal, about creating spaces at these places different than they would ever do. Same thing I do for the Yankees, or I did for Caterpillar, I did for Foxwood. Any of that stuff, I was creating a world that they're not in for them at some point.
Yeah, the entrepreneurial spirit is equaled by the combined passion that everybody has for this cause, for this industry, for what's happening here.
And they weren't allowed to do it. Right. So that's what makes this one different. If you wanted to open a jewelry store, you go to a jewelry store, and you have to figure out how to do it. This was not. They love it. They live it. How do they make their world with it when the world was against it? And now it's spinning in a different direction. And that's fun to watch.
I know you and Jim have had quite a relationship over the years.
Well, the interesting thing about the Dark Crystal was that was around the time that I got to know Jim, and I was working with Johnny Henson, and we were building a balloon thing that was up the middle of John, created by John Conn. And John created this whole balloons with all the Muppets on it, and Johnny was putting it in. I was documenting it for the whole thing for Jim. But at the same time, Dark Crystal was just about ready to come out. And a lot of the elements, because it took them 5 years to make this film. So what was great about it is that we had a chance to be a little part of all that was going on. And then they were moving the exhibits into Lincoln Center. And this was a project that Jim was very, very passionate about. And it was the first, today it would be nothing, and it's just show you how time changed. There were no celebrities in this movie. There were no stars. At one point, Jim even wanted to make sure that this film was not even going to have a language. It was just going to be subtitles. And they would have their own language. Well, I think somebody talked them out of it, and I think that was a good thing. but because people were very afraid of these creatures, and it was so before its time. Now movies with characters come out all the time that have no people in it. You know, as Walt Disney was trying to put people into cartoon, Jim was taking people out of it. So that was really interesting to see how that would work, and would it, you know, work. The movie did very well, but it was mixed reviews because they didn't know what to do with it. And now, 40 years later, everyone is so infected by it. So what happened later on is that the Hensons knew that it was a classic that their dad did. So in 2015, they started doing, the idea was, what if it was a series, what if it was Netflix and whatever. And they were trying to see if there was an audience for this. They knew there was, but they really hadn't tested, and they were doing comic books and all kinds of things. So the idea was to do some kind of teaser. So we did Rise of the Skeksis, and brought these characters back. Then they had a whole bunch of fan films come in, and the fan films showed that there were a lot of people out there. And so you could see this small piece that actually Johnny Henson and I talked about for years. What if there was a sequel to Dark Crystal? What if? And so it was something that Johnny and I would play. And when the opportunity came up, we made this little short that we hope that was what sparked it. And it was that was our tribute. And I went out. The Hensons played it out in L.A. And we were out there, Brian, and they had a great time with it. And it was a lot of fun, and it was just something that really, so now we get a chance to take this piece out for Jim to see what and how the fans like it.
Hey, Bill Diamond, what a pleasure to hang out and talk with you a little bit here today. I knew that this would be a fun interview and a good conversation. I so appreciate it. And also appreciate all your work over the years, too. And I think at the end here, what I'm going to ask, if possible, is I'd like to take a walking tour with you through this little exhibit, and you can kind of give me a little background on a few of these things. Sure. Would be willing to do that? All right, so don't go away, because we're going to have that walking tour for you after this break. Remember, this has been In the Weeds with Jimmy Young. It's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Just to show you where puppetry goes, this is a shoe bill. This was built, there were 3 of them built, one for the show to tour, and the other two are in South Africa. I built them for South Africa because they feed their young. They actually use this puppet to, and I've worked with them to, the shoebill bird is a very prehistoric bird. It's very tall. It's got a very scary sound to it. And when they feed the young, and not many survive, they can't have too much interaction. So they were trying to play with ways of picking up this meat and feeding. So I had talked to them, and they were using gloves and putting little eyes on it and trying to make it look. So I built them, and the beak is made specially to handle about 20 pounds of meat that I designed it for, to pick up, and it actually feeds the young. And South Africa, and I'm supposed to do it for a number of other places. So that's, so that shows you how wide, not even commercial thing that we've created characters for things, we also use it for nature.
Pro Cannabis Media original content is sponsored by Revolutionary Clinics, with 3 locations in the greater Boston market where the medical patient comes first. And by Green Goddess Supply, your online paraphernalia superstore and the home of the Armoire Indoor Growing System. And by Holyoke Cannabis, the sponsor of the Massachusetts Cannabis Report. And by TCP Lighting, grow like a pro with Style Lighting's LED Grow Kit. And by Charles River Insurance, your experienced insurance specialist for the cannabis industry. And Greenspoon Martyr, one of the most respected law firms in the cannabis industry.